Hello everyone and welcome to week 2 of SITHKOP004, develop menus for special dietary requirements. Now this week we are looking at what is a meal and what does it need to include to be a meal. Now, as part of this week's activities, I'm hoping that you can be able to identify some seasonal ingredients that can be used for specific dietary requirements. We're going to start hoping you can start collating recipes that can be used to cater for special dietary requirements, and that create a meal that is healthy, nutritious, balanced, and seasonal on paper. Now, this little mini lesson is going to cover why we should use some seasonal ingredients, using the correct resources to collate recipes, health, nutrition, and balance, and then a little bit of an outline of our task for the week. Now, seasonal food, as most of you know, I am passionate about seasonal food and using seasonal food as much as we possibly can. Now, when we are talking about creating seasonal menus, there's lots of different reasons why we want to do it. Some of the big ones that everybody knows, which I've highlighted here on the slide, is the optimal nutritional value. When things are in season, they're going to have the most nutrients, vitamins, minerals in them. They taste better because of those nutrients and minerals and vitamins that are in there. Food will taste better. We know, if you eat a strawberry in the middle of strawberry season, which was about a month ago here in Brisbane, the strawberries were amazing. But you know what? This morning we had some strawberries. We're heading to the end of the season, and my wife made the observation that in the last week, strawberries have either just been really, really tart or really, really watery. They no longer taste as good as they should be. And if we use seasonal food, it's going to be better priced. It's going to, cost us less money. Now, at the moment, you guys are coming into a sort of a spring, summer season. So we need to start researching the sort of ingredients that we can use in our menus, because we are running spring summer menus. The sort of fruits and vegetables you can use, the sort of the methods of cookery you want to be using as well. Okay, we're coming into spring and summer. We need to try to avoid doing too much heavy braised sauces, because it's not something that is terribly enjoyable to eat on a hot day. But nice fresh salads, grilled food is always very, very welcome on a nice hot day. So I want you to start thinking about the sort of things that you enjoy eating in spring, summertime, okay? And hopefully we start to incorporate those methods of cookery and those ingredients into our menus. Now, you might ask, oh, chef, whereabouts can I find what is seasonal? Now, some great resources for that are the market websites for each city that you're living in. So if you're in Melbourne, there'll be a Melbourne, the Victoria QVB Markets has a website which will has a little sort of guide as to what is in season. The Sydney Markets has one, so does the Brisbane Markets. You can talk to a greengrocer, you can talk to your chefs at work, you can look at other menus that are around as well. And even going to the supermarket is a good way of seeing what's in season. If things are on special, there are lots of them, it looks good, there's a very good chance that those things are in season. Right? Now, one thing that can be confusing is, particularly here in southeast Queensland, is that we can pretty much grow nearly anything we want all year round. And so people get tricked into thinking that, strawberries can be available all year round. Yes, we can get them, but for a lot of the time they're trucked from down south. They get here, they're very damaged. Apples and pears can come from New Zealand. All right, so that's the other one we want to think about, is the food miles in our food. Yes, we can get it because it's in season somewhere else, but how much did that food travel before it got here? All right, so just some of the key things I want you to think about seasonal food. All right. Now, the next thing we need to talk about is using the correct resources. All right, to bring together and collate your recipes. What I'm talking about here is some professional resources. And one of the big difference between professional resources and recipes that are aimed at home cooks is the units of measurement that they use. If you're looking at recipes that are all cups, teaspoons, measured in cups and teaspoons, 3/4 cups or half teaspoons, then that recipe is more aimed at someone at a home cook, because that's the sort of measuring equipment that's going to be more likely to be found in a home cook for home cooks. Although these days that's changing and digital scales are becoming a lot more available to a lot more people. But those recipes, yes, they're okay to get some ideas from, but when you actually come to costing a recipe and creating your standard recipe card, you want to be using a professional recipe that uses grams, kilos, mils, liters, alright, that uses those metric units of measurement, because they are going to be much easier to cost in your assessment task too. It is very, very difficult to start costing everything that's measured in cups and teaspoons, because first you need to change that unit of measurement to grams, and a cup of flour weighs a completely different amount to a cup of milk or a cup of butter. So for every single different vegetable or product, you're going to have to do another mathematical equation. And this can make the costing of recipes an incredibly painful operation. So please stick to using professional recipes. Where can you get those? Industry journals can be very good. So the Australian Bakery Magazine can be a very good source, as well as sources from the Australian Chefs Federation. Your practical kitchen journals that you used in basics, intermediate and superior during your Cert 3 are an excellent source. All the recipes are professional recipes, and they're going to go through all the things that they need, that you're going to need to make them complete dishes. And just avoid those Google search recipes that come from the tasty websites, the websites that are, or the vloggers. A lot of vloggers and bloggers, a lot of those recipes are going to be in cups. They're great to get an idea, but you're going to need to make sure you get a good, accurate recipe from a professional source to be able to do it, to be able to use them accurately in your standard recipe card. And if you happen to be very good at doing that conversion, then that's great. I myself am pretty good at it, but a lot of you might struggle with that. And the easiest way around it is to avoid those recipes altogether. Okay, so we've got professional recipes. Now we need to bring it all together. Alright, when we're putting our dishes together, let's make sure we're thinking about colour, texture, and flavour. Alright, is there lots of different colours on there? Because all those different colours represent different nutrients and different minerals in the food. Alright, different texture, using different methods of cookery to create different types of textures and different ingredients into your food. As well as flavour. Your food must have flavour and it must have appeal. Alright? For a lot of your dishes, you need to make sure it is a complete dish. And we've talked about this when we're doing our Cert 3 in Intermediate and Superior. And this is something we need to think about and we need to revise on. To be a dish, it must have its main item, okay, which may be a protein or a dessert, okay, or if it's a vegetarian menu, it might be or some type of a different type of protein. It must have, for a main course, it must have a carbohydrate on there, a starch, rices, potatoes, noodles, pasta. Right? It must have one accompaniment. This could be a vegetable. It should be a vegetable. And when I say one, must have one, that is the minimum. One is the minimum. It can have 2 or 3 if it wants. And it must have one type of sauce. Alright? Now for an entree, you can lose the carbohydrate, but it must have an accompaniment and it must have a sauce. Now, a common problem, and it happens every term, so I'm going to say it. Chicken skewers, just saying chicken skewers or bavois, a vanilla bavois or grilled steak is not a dish. To be a complete dish and to be described nicely as a complete dish, it must have all the components, and I must have to understand. If a customer has to ask a server too many questions or ask you too many questions about a dish, then you have not explained that dish well enough on your menu. Okay, someone needs to be able to understand straight away what that dish is. But you can't go too overboard either. It's a nice balance. I have had in the past where we have had an explanation of a special. It just goes on and on and on, and by the end of it, you don't want it anymore. So you need to have a nice balance, okay? So that all those components that we've talked about are on there. All right. Now, this week's activities, we've got some readings. Well, there's no official readings, but I want you to start researching and compiling resources for you to find seasonal produce and to find professional recipes. If you need me to send you PDF copies of your practical kitchen manuals because you've lost them, I can put them up in the resource area. In the discussion, I would like you to start sharing memories of some really good seasonal food that you've experienced. Okay? Now, I'm fantastic. I love those of you who I've taught before. You know I love this subject, and I've already shared one there of a great experience I've had in some seasonal food, and I'd like you to share some more with the group. Now, this Thursday night at 7 o'clock, we're going to have our first 1-hour webinar. Now, this week we're going to be looking a little bit of Assessment Task 1 in a little bit more detail, as well as introducing Marissa Martin, who is an allied health professional, dietitian at HelloFresh here in Brisbane at the kitchens. She's responsible for a lot of different food and diets, and she is going to be our industry assessor, who's going to look at a lot of our menus and give us feedback, which will be really, really exciting. And she'll talk a little bit about herself, about her background as well. Now, as a bit of a lesson recap, we've looked at why we should use seasonal ingredients. We've looked at using the correct resources and using health, nutrition, and balance as part of that, and a little bit of our weekly outline. Next week, we're going to start looking at faith-based diets and creating our final meal plans. And as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave them in the discussion area, or you can email. I've also prepared a quiz, as I have every week, for you to check your knowledge on some of the things we've talked about this week and discussed and read. Thank you very much, guys. I will see you on Thursday at the webinar or next week. Thank you.